Thank you for joining us. I'm Jeanette Epps.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Nora Patton.
And I guess we're going to kind of chat with each other. And then, do you mind questions as we chat?
No, not at all.
From the audience?
Yeah, if you want to do it that way. Yeah,
we can do a little bit. And then at the end, we can set aside time.
Perfect.
So, but I'm going to start with the questions. So, I don't know Nora that well, but I've heard so many wonderful, wonderful things about her. And not just wonderful things, but I've also loved how so many people here in Ireland support her endeavors. And that's important to have people who support you. So my first question to Nora is, so tell me a little bit about, first, how did you get interested in space?
Yeah, good question. So I came from Ballina in County Mayo. Anybody from Mayo here? Okay, phew. The Mayo Mafia are strong, you know. But my aunt and my dad's cousins all lived in Cleveland, Ohio. So when I was 11, I got to go and visit NASA in Cleveland. We were on one of the family trips, and we did the usual tourist things. And when I got to NASA, I just thought, this is absolutely amazing, getting to see the aircraft and learning about spaceships and rockets and astronauts. So I was still in national school at the time. So that was really the kind of spark of space inspiration, back in the day.
Okay, so I'm going to cheat, and I have to ask, tell me a little bit about possum.
Yes, okay, so skipping forward. So Possum is a citizen science program. And the really cool thing is, I suppose, coming from Ireland, we obviously don't have a space agency yet. We don't have any astronauts yet. But it's allowed me to learn skills and tools to fly as a scientist on commercial suborbital space flight. So that's the plan, is really to get a seat with Blue Origin, hopefully. But we've done a lot of spacesuit testing. We've done the Dunker, as you know, is pretty interesting.
Yes, it is.
We've done the parabolic flights, things like that. So it's very hands-on, which is really great. I think, combining the book learning with hands-on is so important for anything in life, particularly if you want to get to space.
I definitely agree with that. Very nice. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, so I'm interested. I know you've given a couple of talks here already throughout the day in terms of the amazing NASA training that you do. I suppose going back to when you were a child and the progress and the ambition to get to space, was it always like that, and how did you manage to pave your way in? Because, for so many people, becoming a NASA astronaut is a dream come true. So I'd love to know more about your own journey.
So for me, it started when I was 9 years old, and my older brother was at a university, and he had come home from school one semester, and my twin sister and me, we're the youngest of 7, and so she's actually the youngest. And so he comes home, and he wants to see our report cards. And being 9 years old or so, we really want to please our brothers and our older siblings and our parents. And so we were eager to show him our report cards. And so when he looked at them, he goes, "Oh, wow, you guys have done so well. You can probably become an aerospace engineer or maybe even an astronaut." So you got to realize this was at the time when Sally Ride and all these new women had been selected for the astronaut program. And so it was a big deal for the whole world that the United States finally had a group of women, whereas it was decades prior that the Russians had flew Valentina Tereshkova. So he looks at our report cards and he's like, he makes these comments, and I'm like, they'll never select me to be an astronaut, but I can become an aerospace engineer. So my goal in life was really to become a scientist. And if other things happen, that's awesome. So throughout the years, what I did was I made my career exactly what I wanted it to be, because I saw so many people applying to the astronaut corps, people who I thought were phenomenal, and they weren't getting into the corps. So I said, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take some risks and opportunities where I can, and I'm going to make my career something that I'm really happy with. And I was really happy with my career when I applied to the astronaut corps in 2008. And it was just a shot in the dark is what it was. And lo and behold, here I am.
It's amazing, yeah. Congratulations. It's a huge, huge, huge achievement, isn't it?
But as you know, when we talked earlier, you guys, the whole idea is to be prepared when opportunity comes up, like you. So,
absolutely,
and everything you're doing.
And it is one of those things, isn't it? You kind of chip away. You have maybe a big overarching goal or ambition in life, but you don't turn around the week before and think, oh, I'll apply for this. It's like a kind of a continuous journey, and but that's amazing. Yeah, you've seen like Sally Ride and those. Yeah. Women getting into the core. So in terms of like visibility of different mentors and different role models, were they very important to you in your ambition to apply and to kind of progress from aerospace engineer towards astronaut? Or
well, they were definitely an influence, but someone asked me earlier who was the biggest influence, and I had to say it was my mother, even though she wasn't a scientist or an engineer, neither was my father. But my twin sister and I, we had this desire to go into science. And my mom didn't know what to do with us. She didn't know how do you get these girls, I don't know what to do. But her thing was she just encouraged us. That's why I think it's so impressive how Ireland has backed you in your endeavors, and so many people have said, hey, have you met Nora? And I said, I have to meet this Nora. And so I think it's a wonderful
That's
to have
just going to stick
support.
with me for a long time, by the way.
Well, but it's awesome though, right?
That's amazing.
It's kind of like my mom supporting my sister and I through everything that we went through. We had no clue how to get through, undergrad in physics, and much less going to graduate school and getting over that hump to graduate and get out of there. And so her support was very important. But also seeing people like Sally Ride and all the women that joined and everything that they went through, it's like, well, it is probably a little bold to think if they're doing it, I can do it. But it was more, if they're doing it, maybe I should try at least kind of mentality. And, we don't know what's going to happen, but you got to at least try.
Absolutely.
So for you, who were your biggest influencers, is what I like to call them?
Yeah, maybe Superman as a child.
Well, that's awesome, though.
Loved Dean Cain as Superman. I don't know, I'm showing my age now, but I met Eileen Collins in 2006, and Eileen Collins, her dad's side were from Ireland, actually, so she has a bit of Irish heritage there, but I remember meeting her, and she was the first female space shuttle commander and pilot, and she was just so cool. I thought I had just finished fourth year of undergraduate. I did aeronautical engineering, and I remember meeting her and having chats with her then, and she was just so nice and so supportive, I think, of everything everybody was doing, and that is a real, source of inspiration when you meet somebody of that level and they're that nice and that supportive at that stage in your career and your life.
I have one great story about Eileen Collins. She's actually from upstate New York, where I'm from, and is every time I fly into Syracuse, New York, and then I'm driving away, it says turn right onto the Colonel Eileen Collins Boulevard, which is so cool, right?
That's very cool.
Yeah, because she's really cool. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's and it is, I suppose, visibility. When you see what people have achieved. I think the support in Ireland for me, I'll say very, very openly, it's been so hugely positive. So thank you so much. And I think the visibility for younger people, it's been so positive for them to see. As you say, just because something is deemed impossible, for me, it was never a reason not to at least try. So that's the main point, I think, to get to people.
Yeah, and then just like my mom, she was like, I have no clue what these girls want to do, but we'll just support them and get them forward. But I do think it's important for kids who, we were talking about kids who are bullied and kids who live in communities where they feel like they have no options. They feel like their world is only this big. And then you go into those communities, and even kids who are bullied, and it's just this whole mindset of kind of like they can't see past their troubles. And you go in and you show them who you are, and you tell them, hey, I kind of chose to do this. I didn't really have support, but, I went for it. And it really changes their whole world view. And that's what one of the reasons I really like visiting schools all over the world. I had the chance, of course in the United States I do it often, I go to high schools and things like that, but traveling to other countries like Colombia, just different places to see kids who are just hungry to see something else, which is what I really, really enjoy. And the visibility is crucial. So that's why I'm like, have you visited schools in the U.S., Nora?
Not
really
yet.
should.
That's another not yet. But yeah, I've done a lot of outreach in Ireland, actually, in lots of different communities, and yeah, it's been really positive, actually, the feedback, and I've got them to design mission patches for me for taking to Possum, and yeah, it's been really good. But in terms of like the challenges that you faced over the years, what have they been? And I suppose, has your NASA training prepared you for dealing with challenges and overcoming them? Have you found the training good from that perspective?
Well, so most of the training is on like robotics and spacewalk training and things like that, and really I think when you apply to the astronaut corps, you kind of have accepted the risk that you're going to take. And so I do think that my career up until the point of us applying kind of prepared me mentally for that. But then when you get into the corps, the nice thing about the training is that, you know, people are like, well, what do you do until you're assigned? You kind of continue to do that, but you also start seeing a little bit behind the scenes of how things are done and put together. So the training, it gives you a lot of muscle memory. And especially with spacewalk training, where you're underwater for 6 hours. So you got to have that mental and physical stamina to be in the suit that weighs 300 pounds for 6 hours underwater, and you're trying to work through problems. So the biggest thing that it does is muscle memory, mental endurance. Because, you know, in the suit, you know, after 4 hours, you're exhausted. And then you have to maintain mental focus. Even though you're tired, you don't want to make mistakes, because that's when all your skills start going down, when you're fatigued. And so maintaining mental focus to do things more succinctly as you become exhausted plays a big part.
And in terms of preparing you for that and doing certain things before you get selected as an astronaut, what did you find benefited you personally most to prepare you for those situations? I know scuba training, obviously, but was there any other specific things that you can rely on?
It's kind of funny because, you know, one of the things I did was I volunteered to start going overseas in my job with the government. And one of the first things that I did that I think was the turning point for me was I volunteered to go to Iraq to work for David Kay. And so I was in Iraq for 4 months. And I wasn't working as a scientist. I was working as an analyst to try to gather data along with David Kay and then do an assessment of that data. And so what I realized is that as an engineer, scientist, you're really analytical. And you could take those skills and you can apply it to any situation and figure things out, really come up with some great answers. Sometimes it's not the 100% answer, but sometimes it's 80%. 90% is a good point. So that was the starting point for me to see that being very technical but operational on top of it come together to make a good astronaut. Because if you think about it, as a scientist, you can probably design an aircraft, but you can't necessarily fly it, right? And there was a time when pilots could fly the jet but couldn't necessarily design it. And so what's happened over the years is that these two skills kind of combined, and that's what we do in space. You know, you are an operator scientist there. So the operational part is getting there and then, you know, handling whatever situation pops up on the station. But then the scientist part comes in when you're the eyes and hands for all the scientists on the ground who've amassed their experiments. So in your preparation, what has been the biggest thing for you that you've either had to work on or you felt like, wow, that's awesome, I got the chance to do that, and that's going to go so far in the future?
I think it feeds into what you're saying in terms of I don't think there's ever one road to a destination. Like, there's many side roads that you're constantly building. And I think for me, when I look back, like going international to the International Space University was really an essential move, I suppose, from an education perspective, and also from a networking perspective. I have friends all over the world now, in different fields, and I got to meet astronauts and learn about them and their own backgrounds. And so that was a really good step, I suppose, into a space community. And then, I think what you're saying as well in terms of the operational side of things, I think taking opportunities and also making opportunities, and things don't always go exactly the way you plan, but you learn from that so that when you're in that situation the next time, you're better able to deal with these things and you're more relaxed, I think, for taking on different challenges. So I've definitely found that even with running different outreach initiatives in Ireland. The first one I would have found a huge amount of work because it's the first time you do it, you don't know what to expect, all of those different things, but then the more you do something, the easier it gets. So yeah, I think it's constantly building and looking forward, looking for the opportunities. As you were saying earlier, you have to ask for things and you have to be willing to get out there and take opportunities. A lot of these things don't come to you. So you have to constantly be on the move, yeah.
Definitely. So what are your plans for the next year or so? What are you up to?
What am I up to? Well, I have just come back from Strasbourg, so I was co-chair of a department at the Space Studies programme, which was great, actually, great opportunity at the Space University in France. So the next couple of months I have a children's book coming out in September with O'Brien Press. So they approached me last year and they had seen, I suppose, the impact of my journey and my aspirations in how it was, being taken on in Ireland. So I have an illustrated kids book coming out next month. And then in October I'll be on a panel at the IAC in DC. So I hope, will you be at IAC?
I'm on the list to go.
Fantastic.
So it'll be a lot of fun.
So we'll see you there again.
Yes.
Yeah, great. And also in October we have an Irish student experiment flying on the microgravity flights, which I did last year with Project Possum. So that's, I suppose, it's been wonderful in terms of how the opportunities I've had, I've really been able to bring them back to create more opportunities for younger people here, which has been great. So there's a...
So have you got a fan base that there's got to be a ton of little girls that want to follow in your footsteps? What
I
is
think
that
so.
like?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, honestly, it's. I was at a Children's Books Ireland event last year, and there was just this swarm of young girls at it, and I just thought, this is amazing. Like, you don't plan for these things. I just think it's an amazing, positive thing that comes out of sharing what you're doing and what you're learning and what your experiences have been and what they are. So yeah, I suppose no more than yourself going to the schools, you must see it's.
Well, it's
can be so positive, yeah.
How little girls, when they see you, I'm sure they're like, I never even thought about this. Oh my gosh, she's real, and she actually went and did this. And that's why I know that you have a big following, because I'm always surprised when little girls are, it kind of dawns on me that their eyes are opening. They never thought it was a possibility for them. Mm-hmm. So showing them that, some impossibilities are actually possible. If you put in the hard work and the time, consistency over time, what you can accomplish. And so I've realized that sentiment is almost worldwide in all the places I've been. Even when I did the press conference in Kazakhstan, I had a young lady ask me, when you were a little girl, did you dream of becoming an astronaut? And I'm in the middle of Kazakhstan, Baikonur, and I'm like,
yeah.
But it makes sense, and so it turns out that a lot of little girls all over the world kind of don't think about this as an option for them. And I always try to think back, why did I think it was an option for me? And I attribute my mom with that. She never made it seem like, that's weird. Why do you want to do that? So that's why I know it's got to be a wonderful feeling for you, especially for little girls here in Ireland, to see you doing these things, and you just kind of picked up and started doing it without having a role model here, but you looked at other places and you're like, I can do that. That's awesome. So we are only 20 minutes in, but do you want to let some people ask questions?
Sure, yeah. What do you think?
You guys want to
audience.
ask some questions? Okay, we're going to get a microphone.
Okay.
So we have a good bit of time, so if you have questions, please ask. And I'm sorry, I'm still thinking of questions for Nora, so I may interject one or two too.
Hi, I have two questions. One is very short. Are you or were you science fiction fans? I mean, movies, novels. And the other one is, and I'm very concerned because in the last years, the flat Earth movement is rising, and I don't know where these people come from, because it's nonsense. Thank you.
Maybe I'll leave the flat Earth one to you.
Okay, then I'm starting. You get the flat. Go ahead. Were you a science fiction fan?
I suppose, like, I liked Stargate, SG-1.
So you aged yourself, and I'm going to say Star Trek. Which
That's
is kind of like,
yeah, so...
but I was a big fan. So were you a big fan of Stargate?
Yeah, I loved Stargate.
Me?
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I even loved Dune. So I read a lot of the Dune books. Frank Herbert. See, you're like, who's that? Did you have any other really favorite science fiction movies or books?
I think it was like then when The Matrix and those ones came out, like you can't but love those kind of movies.
I agree.
But yeah, I liked, as a kid, like the kind of superhero type comics and cartoons and things like that. Yeah, what about yourself?
Oh, I'm the same. I love all of that. The Justice League. I love Superman and Wonder Woman, of course. But I was a big fan of, for some reason, Dune was like, it's a weird thing, and Doctor Who. So I started watching Doctor Who when Tom Baker was the doctor. So I have really aged myself, unfortunately. But it is kind of nice that even though we're so, our ages are slightly different, that we have that in common. So I think, one of the things I've been saying during this Worldcon is that a lot of times life will imitate science fiction. And, the examples I always give is that we have FaceTime, which is what Star Trek had, and we have the Bluetooth earpiece that Lieutenant Uhura wore all the time. And it was all science fiction for a long time. And now it's becoming real. And so what else are you guys going to write that we're going to have to imitate? So I agree. And so what about flat earthers?
Oh,
I
no.
know.
I was at an event earlier in the year, and Chris Hatfield, this is Chris Hatfield's quote, not mine. He said, if you wrestle with pigs, the best you're going to be is a pig wrestler.
Yes.
So that was his,
Yeah.
He said he gets asked about flat earthers all the time, so I'll go with his quote.
Well, and I agree with that, but I really do feel almost sorry because for them, because they're wasting their time on something that is easily proven that the Earth is not flat. It's easily proven, so they're spending a lot of time arguing and trying to prove this and going through things, and it is very sad. That time can be spent doing something so much better. So I really do feel bad for them. Yes.
Hi. So you talked about the mental preparedness and doing a lot of that work, but is there room for anxiety in space and mistakes?
Well, so you got to realize that regardless of how much you prepare, stuff can happen. And you got to be able to manage that as best you can. So a lot of the training that we do, expeditionary training, like we do NOLS, which is National Outdoor Leadership School, and that's where we did 10 days in Moab, Utah, in the Canyonlands, camping. No shower, no bathroom, only camping for food, and we're hiking in and out of the canyons, and the weather is going from hot, to rainy. Well, initially, the Dirty Devil River was just mud. Then by the end, it was a raging river with big branches floating down it. And then we even had sleet and thunder and lightning one night. So I know that doesn't sound like much, but with no bathroom, none of these creature comforts, even the toughest guy, after the first 3 or 4 days, who they really are starts coming out. and and it's interesting because you get to know yourself too. I realize that for me, what I end up doing in those situations is I go back to my introvert self, and I just, oh, this is only gonna last 10 days. And you know, you gotta be comfortable with your own stink in those situations and enjoy the little moments, like when we made pizza in the wilderness. We were like, yes, we got pizza and we're in the wilderness. So I become very quiet. And I'm just hiking along getting it done because it's only so many days that we're gonna do this. Some people, you know, one of the things I learned, you also learn your crewmates better and your colleagues better. And so that's what I mean. Even the toughest guys, after a couple of days, their true character and nature is gonna come out. I always love to tell the story of like, you've ever seen that commercial, the Snicker bar commercial, when someone becomes hangry? And you know, when I saw that come out of someone, I was like, holy cow, they have to eat now. And so when you're on orbit and you see that happening, you don't want to judge them, right? You want to judge them properly and say, oh yeah, they're just hungry, get them something to eat, and we keep it moving. So you really do have to learn who you are and to mitigate stuff happening. You do get to know yourself and how you handle really, really tough situations, because it's not all physical. Majority of it is mental. Yeah. And do you want to add?
No, I'm just thinking like the importance of analogs in that situation for mental preparation. Like you've done Nemo, which is the underwater Aquarius module, like total bucket list item for Nora, by the way. But that must have been incredible in terms of the mental preparation, like living and working and, you know, for 9 days under the water. I mean, that's as analogous as you could get, really, to a space environment.
So you really have to petition to do that, because to me, it was one of the closest space analogs, only because you can't just leave the habitat and come back to the surface, because you're living at about 2.5 atmospheres, so you're saturated with nitrogen. And so if you leave, you basically, the chances of you dying are higher than living, because you'll have likely an embolism. So you have to do this oxygen protocol before you resurface and get your blood back to normal and get rid of the nitrogen. And so living under the water, the cool thing is that there were 6 of us. There were 4 astronauts and 2 habitat techs. And the astronauts, Aki Hoshide was our commander. Thomas Pesquet from the European Space Agency was with us. Mark Van de Heij, who's a colonel in the Army, and then me and the 2 habitat techs. So one of the things you'll notice is that it was a very diverse culture and everything that you can think of. But it was never an issue, because we had a mission. And we all rallied around that one mission and what we were doing. And the great thing is Aki Hoshide was our commander, and he was a hard worker. He made sure everyone did their job and everything was done. But the cool thing about Aki was that when it was time to have fun, he was the commander of that team, which is awesome. And so the nice thing about doing Nemo was my crewmates. You know, a young lady said to me, were you the only girl? And I had to think, I said, well, you know what, yeah, I was. It never dawned on me. But that's because that's a testament to my crewmates. And, you know, we had, like, they tormented me like I was the big sister of the group. Like, every time, so what people don't know is that in Nemo, the bathroom is, like, outside. So every time I had to go to go outside of the habitat and swim to the bathroom, they would say, Jeanette's going out, and they would go from one end of the small habitat to the other to harass me. And it was just like, you couldn't go to the bathroom in private or anything. So it was just, at the end of it, we were really good friends, and it is one of the best things that you have to petition. I don't know how to do that. I would definitely, hey, Nora is ideal for this. I don't know how to get those guys to let you in, but it would be wonderful, a wonderful experience for you. Yeah.
It looks amazing, yeah. I've heard like astronauts I've spoken to who've gone on and said, you know, as the best thing as getting the, you know, if they didn't get to space, that was the, you know, as equivalent as you could get on Earth, the Earth.
Because under the water is as strange as space. Oh my God, everything moves.
It must be amazing though, like you're just looking out the window and you see fish and sharks.
Barracuda watching you. Yeah, it was amazing. I highly recommend it.
Very cool.
Yes, I would definitely support you on
and
that.
what was your takeaway in terms of like, okay, so some of us get hangry, or we everybody has trigger points. Like, but what was your takeaway from your own experience in how you adapted to that environment?
So the thing for me is that I have to be more communicative, and because I've become I'm an introvert, so naturally shy, naturally introverted, and so then that's what I revert back to, and it's weird because I was like, holy cow, okay, I really need to talk and communicate a little more. That's what I needed to do, just to make sure that the crew is aware of everyone, and that we're taking care of each other.
I think, isn't it so important though, when you think about those environments that astronauts are put in, for not just the team to recognize about the team, but individually you're learning so much about yourself.
Yes, and that's really important, because you'll know, once you understand, it took me a long time. I mean, I was 40 something when I went through that, and even then, being over 40, I was still learning things about myself, which is kind of crazy. So
I've definitely learned I can get hangry just as a so I've learned to curb it. If I'm going on a long trip, I'll pack bars or something, like snack bars or whatever. Yeah.
Well, tell me, what else have you learned about yourself through this whole thing?
I think I used to get too frustrated early in my earlier career, but I've learned to take time in doing things. That's definitely been a journey over the past 15 years, I'd say. So, and I think I've become more comfortable with things not working out exactly how you planned them. When you start off in your earlier career, you have a certain vision or a certain mindset, I think, maybe.
So for me, time was always of the essence. Do you think that you felt like time, this has got to happen now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When I think back to my early 20s, it was very immediate, but it doesn't have to be like that.
It doesn't work that way in life, huh?
No, it doesn't. But I think that's where, if you get more comfortable with those uncertainties, maybe you don't rush into things as easy as you would have earlier in your career. That's what I find.
So do you think your training prepare you for the unknown?
Maybe not so much definitely the training. Like the Dunker is a perfect example. Do you guys know what the helicopter Dunker is? My parents are here, so I better be careful how much details I give, or they'll be like,
I see it as an unnecessary evil.
They'll be afraid at the next possum program I go on. But the Dunker is like a helicopter crash landing. It's in water. It's a simulation of it. And I think this is a really amazing thing with possum, that I've gotten an opportunity to do that, because as in,
military guys usually do it.
Or astronauts in their training, which is, fantastic for us as citizen scientists getting an opportunity to experience that. But it's to simulate what a helicopter crash landing in water would be like. So you're actually strapped into this cage, as you might say, and you're strapped in 5-point harness, and what they do is you swim over. It's in a big massive pool, custom made pool, and swim over, you hop in, you strap yourself into the seat. They lift the container, which is the helicopter simulator, up above the water, and then they have you can either do it lights out, where the thing is dark, or you have the lights on, and over the sound system they say ditching, 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 and the next thing, this thing lowers in and pushes you down under the water, and you can hear and feel, it's like shh, and you can feel the water moving up, and then you take a breath and your sinuses all filled with water. Tips over, but I think that's where the scuba is so important, to be okay with that kind of environment. But yeah, I think, and then you have certain procedures and tasks to do step by step to get out of this thing. They mock it up so that the window beside you is actually locked and you can't get out, so hold on to your seat. And it's amazing because all your senses are taken away bar your touch, and it's amazing how your brain can then visualize your surroundings just based on what you're feeling. It's really quite amazing how the human body reacts, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. So that is not my favorite thing. Even during scuba skills, what they do is they have you do the ditch and down. and you get the water up your nose when they bring you back up the surface, and you got to hold your nose. So I'm one of those people. I've got to hold my sinuses because it'll burn chlorine. So every time I have to do that, it's like, oh gosh, I got to hold on. So it's not fun, but you get it done.
And there's a sense of pride, I think, you know, when you come out of the dunker and I've survived. But it's a good experience.
You will feel that when you're going through training, like spacewalk training, all of that. So that's why I love that, you're getting the chance to do that, because that's what you're going to feel when after you're done with, especially spacewalk training. The first time that you're in the suit, you're in there for 3 hours, and then you come out and you're like, holy cow, that was amazing. And, because it's physically, and I think that's what it is, it's physically and mentally challenging. So when you have things that are like the helicopter dunker and then being in the spacesuit that become physically and mentally challenging and you get through it, there is a huge sense of pride.
Absolutely.
That you feel.
And so, talk a bit more about the spacewalk training. So it's this like huge, big suit. How long does it take to get into the suit?
There's a whole crew of people that stuff you into that suit. It weighs about 300 pounds, 310 pounds or so, and you have 32 ounces of water in there. You're wearing your mag. Everyone here who was here earlier know what the mag is, the diaper.
Okay, yeah.
And you have people who stuff you into the suit. You got to climb in, and then they put the helmet and the gloves on, and then they lower you into the pool. And
that
it's
must
a
be
40-foot deep
amazing,
pool.
yeah, when you're and you see the water level. That must be really cool.
Well, the parallax in the water and because of the curvature of the helmet, you're like, whoa, you got to adjust your vision a little bit. But you have a ton of divers swirling around you, and their job is to try to make you neutrally buoyant the whole time. That is impossible because as you're under the water doing whatever tasks, the suits start taking on water. And so you become slightly negatively buoyant, then they have to re-weigh you out. And so you really have to be cognizant, oh gosh, this is feeling really heavy, and you're trying to move, hey, I need a way out. So, and then you're in there for 6 hours.
That's a long time.
You gotta last the 6 hours, and that's what I was meaning. You gotta, even though you're exhausted, you have to have the mental focus to do the tasks that without making mistakes, even though you're tired.
And were you always that way? Say, like as a child, did you do sports outside of school, or were there certain things, were you always that way inclined, or do you feel like you've learned it and that you can learn those skills over the years?
So that is the thing for me. I wasn't an athlete. I mean, I did basketball and things like that in high school, but I was not a part of the teams. We did a lot of sports. But the big thing was that my mom was pretty overprotective. So by the time 6 p.m. in Syracuse, we were already home. And so we'd play a lot of sports and things like that. But I do think that for Janet and me, I think for both of us, getting through graduate school was probably the most mentally challenging. And then we always worked out and made sure we were running, doing some kind of exercise to stay in shape. And so for us, it was just making sure we were fit. If a challenge came up, we would do it. But this is what I mean. And once I left Ford Motor Company and started working for the government, a lot of the things I went through there were the kind of things that I needed to learn who I am, and not just learn about myself, but how far I can go and what I can do. And what I can learn, to be honest, because a lot of things that once you join the astronaut corps are things you can't really do outside of the NASA astronaut corps or outside of in Russia. Most of the training is unique to the astronaut corps. So how do you prepare for that? The scuba diving is great. Helicopter dunker, it gets your mental focus in there. That's great. So what do you do? So going on these National Outdoor Leadership School classes, that's another good way to kind of become more self-aware, but also it'll give you the wherewithal to start understanding other people, because what if you're on a team, you don't know everybody, and so it kind of makes you like, you start analyzing your crewmates and wondering what they're like, and trying to figure out, if you have to do team care, or, what's going on with this person.
Yeah.
Are they hungry?
Yeah.
We need to make sure, like some people, when they feel like they're not being heard, they become very quiet.
Yes.
And so whenever I have a group of students, I always make sure I ask the student who's the most quiet in class a question and try to draw it out of them. And all of a sudden, they're a part of the group. So there's little techniques, and like I always said, I think it's more mental than physical, because your body will limit itself, but your brain will not. Your body will go as far as your brain will take it. And sometimes, you may, reach a limit in your body, but you can actually go further than your body thinks it can.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned, is that your body will go way farther than it thinks it can. And it is a mental battle sometimes. So, great questions. I guess we should we got 10 more minutes. Yes.
Hi, I'm a friend of Kevin Chilton. Do you know General Kevin Chilton?
I know that
Flew
name.
11 years.
Yes.
He's the most decorated astronaut in the entire shuttle program.
Wow.
His mother is from County Mayo, Nora.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yes. And he's now retired. He attained the highest level you can in the military. Went back to the military after he flew 3 missions.
Yeah.
And he was my friend and classmate. And he asked me to do a painting for him. He took in the payload of Endeavour as a commemorative, token for our school. And it was in his little compartment, which I guess every astronaut gets a little 12 by 16 or small drawer or something that's under the floorboards of the orbiter.
Yeah.
Did you guys take anything or did you take anything on your missions as a special good
So
luck
I'm
charm?
a part of the 2009 class, and we
Yeah.
were slated to fly with the Russians. So I haven't flown yet, but all of the training that we do with the Russians in the Soyuz is a 3-man seat, and it's very small. So if you take anything up, it's very tiny.
So did you take something up? Anything
Well, I've
special
set
thing?
several things up, but they're always really, really small. I don't know if you've seen the inside of the Soyuz.
It's teeny.
It's,
Yeah.
and you're saying that. I'm like, no, I'm 5'8", and I'm bigger than you. It's tiny, so you can't take much up with you, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Hi, you talked about outreach for crewed spaceflight. Do you feel you have a similar ambassador's role for uncrewed spaceflight, space exploration, Earth exploration?
So you're talking about like opportunity and spirit and things like that. The great thing about those kind of missions, and those are uncrewed, right? And it's robotic missions, is that the engineers who build them become the superstars. And I love that people kind of can see behind the scenes and see that when you go to space, it's not one person. It's thousands of people behind you that get you into space, especially when you think about the international aspect of it. When you're training with the Russians, all the Russians in Star City, and then all the Russians over in Kazakhstan, they're included just like all the engineers back at Johnson Space Center in Houston. But then there's people in Huntsville, Alabama, people in Kennedy Space Center, people at NASA Goddard, and there's tons of people that get you into space. So we're not necessarily the ambassadors for the uncrewed, but the great thing is that I think the culture has shifted where the engineers get the credit for the work that they do on that.
I suppose I can speak a little bit about Ireland. So back in 2014, I arranged with, nanoracks.
Yes.
So nanoracks have commercial access to the space station. So we sent a student experiment from Ireland, which was the first student experiment to go to the ISS, the International Space Station, and was tested by Alexander Gerst on board, which was really cool. So I think there's lots of different ways you can open up opportunities past for experiments and different things like that. And also through Possum, I've ran quite a few mission patch competitions for younger kids in Ireland, which has actually been a really nice way of involving them and getting them to think about space missions and what they would design, because as you say, the space is so limited. I was able to just pop them in my pockets and bring them on my suborbital soon, but my zero-G, my microgravity flight. So there's ways there's lots of different ways you can engage people through outreach, I think, and obviously talks and panels and things as well. So yeah.
I agree. Yes.
The reference there to being ambassadors for the various programs is apt, and I just wonder if you have thought of it from your perspective, how much of a gift that you and what you do gives to the rest of us and to the world.
Well, that's very sweet.
Very nice, yeah.
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 Well, it's funny because I always think that we're the lucky ones that get to represent other people, and it's kind of incumbent upon us to make sure that we recognize, like, I really do recognize that science fiction writers are part of the reason that I'm here. You know, here I was, this little girl watching Star Trek and wanting, you know, I wish I could see the people that I'm talking to over the phone, and just like, holy crap. I didn't have anything to do with that, but I was definitely inspired to go into aerospace engineering and all these different things, watching public television, watching Doctor Who, and wanting to travel into time and wanting a TARDIS of my own. And so science fiction writers really have influenced me to just dream about different possibilities and what could be real, and don't limit things based on what I'm seeing. So,
Yeah, I equally, I think, like, I've sometimes visited schools and they've had like a board of Nora on the wall. And honestly, it's such a huge honor for me to see that impact. I think it's definitely my honor to, you know, be that visibility person to them in terms of how I've gone from that 11-year-old in Mayo all the way through. So no, it's an honor, and even when I meet them, I did a part of the kids program today, and they're just brilliant. You know, they come up, and adults too. I don't mean just kids. Like, I mean the questions and the interactions of everyone it's my honor is the way I look at it, for sure.
Yeah, we're the lucky ones that get to represent a lot of different people. So I say thank you guys, actually. So.
And a lot of people who would have loved to have had that opportunity, but for whatever reasons haven't got it, haven't been able to make it happen as well. Yeah,
I definitely agree. Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Or comment. Thank you.
Of the technologies that are being developed at the moment, which would you consider to be the most exciting for the future?
It's hard to pick one.
It is.
It's impossible to pick one. I don't know. I think there's actually so much happening. Like 3D printing, I think is amazing in terms of, you know, 3D printer on the ISS they've made in space. You know, I think it's really hard to pick just one. You know, as you're going to the moon, there's actually, and further afield, there's so many technologies. You're moving past low Earth orbit, getting more independence from Earth. There's a lot of cool stuff happening on the ISS. I know you showed the flame this morning, which is really cool. You know, you're getting people thinking the difference between Earth and space is so different.
Well, and so I agree. There's so much that's going to happen, and the other big thing that I'm hoping that you guys as science fiction writers start thinking about. I did meet a gentleman who was a biologist, but all the stem cell and genetics research that's going to happen, that is going to be very cool, because, you know, we're going to need to develop more and more countermeasures of how do we get the human body to last longer and longer outside the Earth's protection. So for me, you know, the radiation protection that we're going to need, those technologies are going to have to come along. The propulsion systems, the things we have not thought of yet are going to start coming out of the woodwork because of you guys. Because, you know, you guys dream it and you write it, and then somebody, a scientist is like, oh yeah, we never thought about that. Let's see if we can do it. And lo and behold, boom, you got FaceTime. Don't even get me started. So I think it is hard to choose, but, you know, my twin sister was, she worked on a lot of genetics and different things in graduate school. So genetics probably is my slight favorite, but there are other things that are going to be so cool that's going to come along.
When you do outreach, what do you think is the most fun science thing to show children?
Oh. Well, they always ask, how do you go to the toilet in space? It's definitely a favorite question of theirs.
The training for that is hilarious.
I bet, yeah.
The camera. Yeah, you're like, what?
That's hilarious.
Have
I
you-
think
have
they
you ever
just
shown
like
the
to
flame?
hear. Pardon?
Have you ever shown the blue flame to the
I actually have an illustrated picture of it in my book because
Okay,
I think
very
it's a
cool.
really cool
Yes.
thing to show.
Because
like,
you don't think about it,
you
right?
don't at all.
And it seems like it should be intuitive, and you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
But we
absolutely.
don't think
Which way is
without
up
gravity.
or down? Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of the outreach, I think when I show like videos of me doing things, I think that really relates to them because I love videos from that perspective. Photos are great, but I think videos are transport the audience there to what's happening,
agree.
you know. So I think the videos of me doing things has been a really cool thing for them to see.
Yeah, mine is still showing that flame because even sometimes adults are like stumped by that. They're like, why is that happening? But it is because our thinking is so embedded in gravity. But then when you start thinking about, oh, well, what do you do without gravity? And you start thinking, well, your cells probably change. They do. Your genetics change. Some things turn on, some things turn off. And so getting into a discussion about that with the kids. But the other big thing that they love to ask, what do you eat? And so when they start seeing freeze-dried green beans and Brussels sprouts, they're not so happy about those. and so the food is always a cool thing because they're like, oh, we couldn't eat that. But it actually tastes better than it looks. So.
We're all done. I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
Okay, wow.
unfortunately, that ends it. So Nora, thanks for being my guest.
Thank you for being my guest.
And then,